Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Giacomo Meyerbeer's Le Prophète with conductor Enrique Mazzolla, which was live from the Deutsche Oper Berlin. I mainly knew this opera through two of Fides's arias, À mon fils and Au prêtre du bal, Berthe's Mon cœur s'élance et palpite, and even the final drinking song by Jean de Lede, which eventually leads up to an execution duet by Jean de Lede and Fides. On top of that, much like its predecessor, Les Huguenots, Le Prophète also has some historical context, as it was based on the life of John of Leyden, who was basically an Anabaptist leader and the self-proclaimed King of Münster. The basic plot to this opera goes like this. It all takes place in the 16th century Holland, and Berthe is so excited to see Jean because she has been betrothed to him, but now she wants the permission of Count Oberthal, who is basically the feudal lord, to also allow them of their marriage. Fides approves of this, and the two women head off to Count Oberthal's castle when they are stopped by three Anabaptists wearing black, and once Count Oberthal arrives, he recognizes one of them, which was Jonas, as he has the three men beaten and both Berthe and Fides arrested. After that mishap that Jonas, Matissan, and Zachariah experience, they encounter Jean, and they basically want him to be the leader of the Anabaptists. Jean has no interest whatsoever and wants to be loyal to Berthe and his mother. Once he finds out that Berthe is kept captive by Count Oberthal, he has no choice but to join the three Anabaptists, and through that, he becomes not only their leader, but their prophet. Whilst he's gaining power and influence as the quote-unquote prophet, he basically alienates not only his mother, but also his lover. So much so to the point where Fides tries to approach him as his mother, but Jean does not want anything to do with her and sends her away, refusing to acknowledge Fides as his mother, as he will end up getting executed. Fides longs for her son to come back, and after a change of heart, Jean does reunite with his mother and his lover Berthe. However, Berthe recognizes that Jean and the prophet are the same person and commits suicide. Having lost the only person he ever loved, Jean decides to not only kill himself, but all of his enemies. So a feast is arranged and everything seems to be all jolly and merry. However, this is Jean's final plan, not only to do himself in, but also all of his enemies in. And once Jean arrives to execute Jean, the gates are barred, and Fides joins him as the flames engulf and everyone in the opera dies. So what really makes this opera so interesting are the characters. First of all, you have Jean, who is the designated anti-hero. Much of his motivations are rather ambiguous. Does he want to exact revenge against Count Oberthal because he stole Berthe from him? Does he want to expose the Anabaptists because of the fact that they're also hypocrites? Is he a pawn in the Anabaptists' plan to take over what's theirs? It's kind of unclear what his motivations are, but despite all that, he is really fascinating as a character because he is not one of those typical operatic heroes that one would see. Whenever you think of an operatic hero, you think that he's noble, willing to fight for his beloved, and he's basically the designated hero. Well, Jean de Lede is basically more complex than that, and I'm sure that's also why a lot of tenors find him rather enjoyable to not only portray him and sing him, but also to embody him. But by far, the most fascinating character in this opera has to be Fides. She loves her son unconditionally and will do everything she can to keep him safe from all sorts of harm and from all sorts of ills that may come his way. And she's so willing to also die alongside him as the flames are engulfed in the castle. Jean de Leide's and Fides's relationship is almost akin to the relationship that Manrico and Azucena have in Trovatore. They're pretty much like spiritual cousins, not only because of the fact that these two have a lot of great music to sing, and even challenging one at that, but because of how close these two really are. And one would definitely root for Jean de Leide's and Fides's relationship as son and mother more so than with Manrico and Azucena, because their relationship is a lot more fleshed out, and he did grow up with her. Granted, the original John of Leyden's mother did pass away before he even came of age, but the fact that this mother figure is also brought into this opera, which was based on historical facts, is actually kind of interesting, as we do get to see their dynamics, and of course, how they seem to relate to each other. And I swear, the three Anabaptists, Zacharia, Matissan, and Jonas, are pretty much the most entertaining and, dare I say, skin-crawlingly frightening villains in this opera. First of all, they're basically a sort of caricature of Christian fanatics. And for those of you not in the know, Anabaptists are people who basically profess their faith and stick to it rather than be baptized ever since they were infants. And these three villains are definitely fascinating because they represent the dangers of demagogy and hypocrisy, as they also use their influence in order to power up their own propaganda. However, in spite of the fact that we have these really deep characters, there are a couple who are basically kind of one note, like Berthe is the lover, and she's the one who will always stay true to Jean, and Count Oberthal is basically a sort of anti-villain, even though a lot of his actions are really nasty. From kidnapping Berthe so that he can make her his bride, to basically doing all of these nasty things, not only to Jean, but also the Anabaptists and the people he's supposed to look after. So there's no doubt that with such a grand story, you also need to have such really large-scale characters, and those definitely have to be Fides, Jean de Leyde, the prophet of the title, and the three Anabaptists. With that said, let's get on to what I thought about the singers, starting off with our titular prophet Jean de Leyde, sung by Gregory Kunde. Now, essentially, you do need a lyric tenor to sing this role. However, he also needs to be backed up by some spinto qualities. He doesn't just have to sing everything so elegantly with such great phrasing and a great diction, but he also needs to back it up with passion, fire, and a really great sense of drama. He needs the lyricism of a Tamino, Belmonte, Pedrillo, Ferrando, Arbace from Idomeneo, Don Ottavio from Don Giovanni, the Duke from Rigoletto, Alfredo from La Traviata, Ruggero Lastuc from La Rondine, Rode Nancy from Les Huguenots, De Grieux from Manon, Julien from Louise, Cavaliere Belfiore from Il Viaggio a Rome, and even Comptorie from Le Comptorie, and combine that with the meteor singing found in the likes of Riccardo from Un Ballo in Maschera. So when you have these attributes combined, then you definitely have a very stirring performance, and you also need to back it up with some really great acting. There has been no shortage of tenors from the different feccia, whether it be the lyric tenors, the spinto tenors, and even the dramatic tenors, who specialized in this particular role. Even more so, some tenors have found success singing Jean de Leyde, ranging from James McCracken to Nikolai Gedda to what we have nowadays with John Osborne and Bruce Sledge. And with Gregory Kunde, I thought he was able to do a very wonderful job singing this particular role. As I stated before, I have been following his career for countless of years, as he did start off as a lyric tenor before eventually singing some more spinto tenor roles, and these days he seems to not only sing the spinto tenor roles, but also the dramatic tenor repertoire. And what has always been so commendable about Gregory Kunde is his superb musicianship. The way he was able to be so committed as a singing actor is just 2 thumbs up, because he really knew how to use his voice with such great abandon, but he also knew how to play off of nobility, which he did on such a peerless level. And he has always been a devoted singing actor who always sharpened his craft, and he definitely knew how to make Jean de Leide shine as a character. So, Gregory Kunde, bravo to you and to all of your efforts. You certainly did a magnificent job embodying this iconic anti-hero. And I'm sure that anyone who listened to his performance would have also felt the same way, as he was excellent all the way through, all thanks to his great flair for drama and, of course, his peerless musicianship. By his side, we have his mother, Fides, who was sung by the gorgeous young dramatic mezzo-soprano Clementine Margaine. Now, much like Azucena, Laura Adorno, Mère Marie, Madame de la Haltière, Branghene, Fricke, Ortrud, Kundry, Maddalena from Rigoletto, La Contessa di Coigny from Andrea Chenier, and even Dalila from Samson et Dalila. You really need a dramatic mezzo to embody this particular role. A lot of her vocal lines are really difficult to sing, because there are some moments in which she has to sing high and that she has to dig in deep to those chest notes. So the fact that you need someone to sing those high soprano notes and dig in to those chesty contralto notes is surely a marathon run for any mezzo-soprano. Yet, many dramatic mezzos and contraltos rose up to the challenge to take on this iconic mother figure. And those have included Margareta Matsunawa, Sigrid Onegin, Marilyn Horne, Agnes Balza, and Marion Cornetti. So the fact that some of these mezzos rose up to the challenge to take on this particular role is not only commendable on their parts, but also something that tests their overall talents and skills as opera singers. And I thought that Clementine Margaine was really amazing in this iconic mother figure. She was able to make such wonderful music with that well-focused and well-tuned dramatic mezzo voice that I was practically on cloud 9. And she was able to act so tremendously with that said voice that I was really involved with her portrayal as Fides. She was so moving in her arias, and at the same time, she had this exciting quality which made her stand out superbly. And how she sang her final duet with Gregory Kunde's Jean de Leide was absolutely thrilling to listen to. I was so impressed with everything she had to offer, and it should come off as no surprise that I've been following her career for about 3 years, and she just really seems to go from strength to strength. I would really love to hear her in roles like Fricka from the Ring tetralogy, Ortrud from Lohengrin, Kundry from Parsifal, Branghene from Tristan und Isolde, and even Dalila from Samson et Dalila. I'm not so sure if she sang that role, but if she did, I can't wait to see her in that role live. She's got an amazing future in all of these hefty sounding and absolutely thrilling dramatic mezzo roles that I continue to root for her from beginning to end. As Jean de Leide's lover, Berthe, we have the lovely and ever so mellifluous lyric soprano, Elena Tsallagova. And what you need in this particular role, even though her character is rather simple, is essentially either a lyric coloratura soprano or a light lyric soprano, but not the soubrette type, but someone who is near the full lyric type. Any soprano who sings Berthe has to be able to demonstrate such fine coloratura singing, evidenced from the likes of Marguerite de Valois from Les Huguenots, La Princesse Eudoxie from La Juive, Blanchen from Die Entführung aus dem Serail, the same thing can be said about Constance, Giunia from Lucio Silla, Aspasia from Mitridate, Il Re di Ponto, Ilia from Idomeneo, Madame Silberklang from Der Schauspieldirektor, Gilda from Rigoletto, Oscar from Un ballo in maschera, Violetta from La Traviata, Amenaide from Tancredi, Corina from Il Viaggio a Rome, Adele from Le Comptoir, and even Zdenka from Arabella, and combine that with pure lyrical singing evidenced in roles like Louise from Charpentier's Louise, Pamina from Die Zauberflöte, Susanna from Le Nozze di Figaro, Magda from La Rondine, and even Liu from Turandot. When you combine such agile coloratura singing with such plaintive and lovely lyric singing, then I'm sure that this combination will definitely come in handy when one sings Berthe. And I thought that Elena Tsallagova was commendable in this role. I have been admiring this particular lyric soprano for quite some time, ever since I first heard her singing Pamina at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. What has always been commendable about Miss Tsallagova is her pristine musicianship, found in her silvery, light lyric soprano voice, and the way she was able to make such clean attacks on the high notes were absolutely of the highest order from her part. She was able to bring in a lot of purity and lovability to Berthe that my heart practically bled for her. Yes, this character is rather simple, as she is meant to be Jean de Leide's lover who is forever devoted to him, but can't help but falter when she finds out that Jean and the Prophet are the same people. But I really have to give Elena Tsallagova lots of credit for how she was able to make this character strong, not only with the usage of her voice, but also her innate sense of theatricality. Then we go to the three Anabaptists, Zacharia, Matisson, and Jonah. So let's start off with Zacharia, who was sung by Derek Welton. And what you need in this particular Anabaptist is a bass baritone or a basso cantante. Anyone who can be able to put in a great amount of menace and even emit such a strong and sturdy stage presence are definitely traits that you would need to embody Zacharia. And many a bass baritone and basso cantante who would sing this particular role would also sing the likes of Don Giovanni, Marcel from Les Huguenots, both the Speaker of the Temple and Zarastro from Die Zauberflöte, both Pimen and Boris Godunov from Boris Godunov, Dosife from Kovanchina, Conte Walter from Louisa Miller, and many other great roles for a true basso cantante. And I thought that Derek Welton was excellent in this particular role, with his signature bass baritone / basso cantante voice, which showed flexibility and was so virile in all the registers, and of course that absolutely amazing and well-focused vocal presence which he has been very well known for. There's no doubt that he went from strength to strength every time I saw him and heard him, and he certainly proved himself to be as wonderful as he has always been, with his trademark bass baritone voice, which also has the depths of a true basso cantante, and of course, his great flair for drama. Noel Bouley was an equally virile, handsome, and absolutely threatening Matissin. And what you need in this role is also either a basso cantante or a bass baritone. And anyone who has sung the likes of Leporello, Baron Ochs from Der Rosenkavalier, Wurm from Louisa Miller, and many other great roles for either a basso cantante or even that of a bass baritone who can dig into those low notes would even flock to sing this particular role. And much like his fellow Anabaptist, Zachariah, who is also on the lower side, he does also need to present himself as threatening and someone you do not want to mess with when you cross his path. And Noel Bouley certainly did a fabulous job with this particular Anabaptist. What I've always admired about Noel Bouley is his great musicianship. That absolute dedication he has to his craft as a singing actor is extremely commendable. And not to sound corny or anything, I definitely look up to him as a role model because he has one of the most flexible instruments I have ever heard. The fact that he can go from singing all of these low basso notes to having that rich middle range of a true bass baritone and even hitting some baritone high notes, whether it be some G's or some A flats, is certainly a mark of insurmountable versatility found in Mr. Bouley, whose career just seems to grow and flourish and seems to be an absolutely enriching one. Andrew Dickinson was equally as fine and handsome as Jonas, and as opposed to Jean de Leide's more lyrically heroic singing, Jonas really does require a true light lyric tenor. And at times he does need to have some traits of a character tenor, but if you ask me, I always prefer it when a light lyric tenor embodies this particular role. Yes, he doesn't really have a lot of high singing, a la Almaviva from Barbiere di Siviglia, Lindoro from L'Italiana Laggeri, Neocle from Le Siège de Corinthe, Ramiro from Cenerentola, and many other great roles for a high-flying light lyric tenor, but he does need to have great musicianship and a pristine technique to back him up. And when it comes to his part as the three Anabaptists, he has to blend very handsomely with the two deeper voices, as he stands out as the one with the higher voice. And Andrew Dickinson was absolutely charming as Jonas. The way he was able to use his clean and clear light lyric tenor voice was very well done. He had great precision, a pristine technique, and of course, he was able to play off of Noel Bouley's and Derek Welton's deeper, richer tones effectively. In fact, these three managed to blend well so perfectly that I have to give all three of these great Anabaptists a lot of kudos for not only great vocal performances, but also their innate sense of theatricality, as they were able to bring these three despicable characters to life. Seth Carico was a charismatic, charming, dashing, and debonair Comte Obertal. And what you need in this particular role is a Helden baritone. Yes, he's not that much of a high singer like Nabucco from Nabucco, Giorgio Germont from La Traviata, Monforte from I Vespri Siciliani, Simon Boccanegra from Simon Boccanegra, Amunasro from Aida, Telramund from Lohengrin, Le Grand Prêtre du Dagon from Samson et Dalila, and many other great roles for a dramatic baritone that I could barely name off the tip of my tongue. But he also needs to have some of the rich low notes found in Klingsor from Parsifal and Albrecht from the Ring tetralogy. He needs to combine that villainous quality evidenced in Albrecht to some fine singing done by Giorgio Germont, and even put in some dramatic singing evidenced in characters like Telramund and Kurvenal. And I thought that Seth Carico was absolutely amazing in this particular role. There is a brilliant future for this awesome bass baritone in a lot of these elegant and, of course, absolutely dramatic Heldenbariton roles, whether it be Don Giovanni from Mozart's Don Giovanni or even that of Kurvenal from Tristan und Isolde. I have been really wanting to hear him in this particular leading villainous role. He had this sort of debonair presence, which is not only evidenced in his voice, but also in his mannerisms. He was able to make Le Comte Aubertal come alive with not only his menace, but also his dignity, which hides a sense of sleaze in this particular character. So, Seth Carico managed to win me over once again with his wonderfully skillful singing and, of course, his great dedication to his craft as a fine bass baritone. We also have such amazing singing found in Sandra Amouy, Davia Bouley, Ya-Chung Huang, Taras Berajansky, Dean Murphy, and Byung-Gil Kim. So overall, the singing was absolutely exceptional, especially when you have such a strong veteran found in Gregory Kunde, and even some fresh new faces in the dramatic repertoire found in the likes of Clementine Margaine and Seth Carico, and of course, the absolutely great contributions made by Elena Tsallagova, Andrew Dickinson, Noel Bouley, and Derek Welton, and every other singer who participated. I have to say that this was definitely a great tour de force work, and the conducting done by Enrique Mazzolla was well done from beginning to end. He was able to control the orchestra and chorus very well, all thanks to his masterful hands, and he was able to find out some positions in which he can tease out a few moments, and the big highlight for me has to be the ending scene. And of course, the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were absolutely amazing, as they've always been. So overall, what a great evening I had last night listening to this particular Grand Opera with such exceptional singing and some fine conducting. This is a definite must listen. And for those of you who saw Meyerbeer's Le Prophet at the Deutsche Oper Berlin and even heard all the singers, what did you think of it? Did you feel like Gregory Kunde, Clementine Margaine, and Elena Tsallagova stole the show as Jean, Fides, and Berthe respectively? Did you feel like there was another singer or another group of singers who kind of stole their thunder? Or did you feel like there was someone or something that just didn't really hold up? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in for another review. So until then, good night everybody.